Crusades. So during the Crusades, which is a set of holy wars, Christians and Muslims fought over control of the Holy Land. So I just wanted to spend a couple minutes explaining what the Holy Land is, where it is, and why it's considered holy. So when you look at this map, you can see that the Holy Land is actually right here. It is the city of Jerusalem. Right? So this is a modern map of the Middle East. So the city of Jerusalem is in the modern country of Israel, which is in the Middle East. And if we zoom in, we can see that this is what the old city looked like. And you can see that there is something known as a Jewish quarter, a Christian quarter, and a Muslim quarter. And that's going to be significant because the Holy Land, the city of Jerusalem, was important to the Jews, Christians, and Muslims, right? So when we talk about why that is there are three major structures. This Jerusalem is said to be where the first and second temple that the Jews built in the kingdom of Israel was. And there is one remaining wall of that second Jewish temple that is considered to be one of the holiest places in all of Judaism. So many Jews like to make a pilgrimage to this location to pray at the site of the Western Wall. Jerusalem is also the city where the Dome of the Rock is. And the Dome of the Rock sits in the complex known as the Al-Aqsa Mosque. And it was built, the Dome of the Rock is actually built over a stone that is said to be where Abraham was prepared to sacrifice his son for God. Muslims also believe that this is the location of where Muhammad ascended into heaven and received God's message. So this is considered to be one of the holiest places in Islam, actually the third most holy place in all of Islam. And then you have the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, which is also in the city of Jerusalem. And the Church of the Holy Sepulchre is said to be where Jesus received the cross and his bones were laid to rest. This church was built on top of that location. All three of these very religious places where Christians, Jews, and Muslims like to go to pray and be closer to their faith are all in this one city of Jerusalem, right? So once again, here's that city, and we can see here is that Western Wall, here's the Dome of the Rock, and here's the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. So this was a very holy land for all three faiths, and many people of the Jewish faith, the Christian faith, and the Islamic faith would make pilgrimages to this holy city. What we're going to see in the next section of this video is that once the Muslims gained control of this region of the world, over time, the Western world or Europe began to want control back of the Holy Land, right? So at first, it had been under the control of the Christians. However, over time, what ends up happening is that land, same area, becomes under the control of a group known as the Seljuk Turks, who were Muslim. So in the next part of the video, we're going to go over the W's of the Crusades: who, what, when, where, and why. So this is going to be a short overview of what the Crusades were. So we're going to ask the W questions: who, what, where, when, and why. So what were the Crusades? The Crusades were a holy war or a war for religious reasons. It was actually not just one, but it was a series of 4 wars that were fought between Christians and Muslims in order to control what is known as the Holy Land, which happens to be the city of Jerusalem. So Jerusalem was this very important religious place for Christians, Jews, and Muslims. And many Jews, Christians, and Muslims all made pilgrimages, holy voyages, to the city of Jerusalem. However, in the late Middle Ages, the Pope called for what is known as a crusade or a holy war to try and regain control of the city of Jerusalem. So that's the what. When and where? So, as I said, there were 4 crusades. The first one started in the year 1096, and the last one didn't end until the year 1204. So we're talking about 200 years of wars. Where did these wars take place? They took place here in this circled region, and ultimately all of them were to fight for control of the city of Jerusalem. So prior to the year 1096, the city had been under the control of a group known as the Seljuk Turks. And the Pope, who we now know was the most powerful person in Europe, had basically stated it was time for the Christians to regain control of this city. And so he calls for a crusade or a holy war. Who fought in the Crusades? 2 groups of people fought in the Crusades: Western European Christians and Muslim Turks. So on the Western European side, you had kings, lords, serfs, and even criminals. The Pope granted anyone who fought for the Crusades absolution. So what he did was he absolved them of their sins, and kings included forgave criminals of their crimes if they were willing to go and fight. On the other side were the Muslim Turks, a group of people known as the Seljuk Turks who were Muslim, were in control of the city of Jerusalem. And as a result, due to the fact that the Pope wanted control over this holy city, they fought to maintain their own control. Why? All right, so the reason this crusade was called, or the reason the Pope called for the Crusades, was because this group, the Seljuk Turks, had control over the holy city of Jerusalem. So Muslims were in control of this holy city. Now, it wasn't that they didn't allow Christians into the city to make their pilgrimages. They did, but they charged a lot of money and they could be dangerous. So the Pope decides that in order to make it safer and in order for him to gain more power, he would call for a crusade and ask Christians to go and fight in the name of their faith in order to regain control of the Holy Land. So that's why he calls for the crusade. So why were they considered a successful failure? So ultimately, I'm going to go back for a second to the where and when. As you can see, there were 4 crusades in total, and in the end, Christians did not end up controlling the city of Jerusalem. In the end, Jerusalem stays in the hands of the Turks. So after all of that fighting, by the 4th Crusade, they don't even make it to the city of Jerusalem. So the Christians really are not successful at their goal. They do not meet their first goal, reclaim the Holy Land. However, lots of stuff does change in Europe. So that's why we call it a successful failure, because it does cause some positive changes. For example, as an effect of the Crusades, trade increases. The kings became more powerful. Serfs are freed from the land because they go and fight. They see other things that happen in the world. If we remember back to our lesson on Lenoralism, serfs really never interacted with anyone outside of the manor, so they were very unaware of what else was happening in the world. And when they go on the crusade and they go to the Middle East and they see universities and they see trade goods and silk and paper and books and spices, they're so amazed. And this allows them the opportunity to do things outside of farming. So when the Crusaders return and talk about all the things they experienced, more Europeans become interested in learning about what is happening in the rest of the world. And lastly, people learn about other cultures. So the negative side is that people of different faiths begin to hate each other. We see more religious intolerance in between the Christians, particularly Christians try and force Jews and Muslims out of Europe as a result. And both the Pope and the church lose power. Remember, they said we were going to go fight for God and we were going to be victorious because we're right. We should own the Holy Land. And then they don't. So the Pope and the church lose power, but the kings become far more powerful. So that's a quick overview of the who, what, when, where, and why on the Crusades.